Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. For many of us men, entering middle life can feel unsettling, if not downright upsetting. We talk about being more than halfway through life, on the back nine, or some other less than tantalizing description of this stage of life. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it can be the beginning of the richest part of life. We know more than we used to, and we can apply that knowledge to live more fully than we ever have. I was recently the guest on the Midlife Male podcast with Greg Scheinman. I loved our conversation, subsequently read his book, also called Midlife Male, and found it engaging and full of insights. So I decided to have him as a guest on this podcast for you, dear listener. As you will hear, Greg is a man rich with vitality and one who has given a lot of thought to this stage of life. I am impressed with how fully he lives, while simultaneously how selectively he lives. That is, there are so many things that he could do that he does not do because they are not consistent with his focus. I like that. So listen in as Greg and I talk about living more fully in midlife. Greg Scheinman, a hearty welcome to Super Psyched.
This is how I love finishing up a week with a good conversation with somebody I like very much. So thank you for having me.
It's so mutual. I am so impressed by you, so inspired by you, so glad to have you as a new friend. Loved your book, Midlife Male. Loved being interviewed on your incredible podcast, Midlife Male, by the same name, that's had guests like Troy Aikman on. Great interview, by the way. Just really saw a side of Troy that I could have never imagined from a Hall of Famer NFL quarterback. Like, what a great guy. And you bring these out, and your book, the words fly off the page. And I think it's required reading for any man who is, 40 plus, who wants to hit it and live while they're living. You have hit it hard. You are exemplifying what it means to defy age in its traditional sense, to maximize meaning and fun. And you even have a tattoo to that extent. Like, don't say that, age has anything to do with fun. You say that's a bunch of BS. So let's talk about Midlife Male and how you got into really geeking out to what makes midlife for men really meaningful.
Wow. First of all, thank you. That means a lot. It really does. And that is really the how I got into this. I wanted to feel like this. I wanted to feel that happy, that kind of gratification, that kind of fulfillment, and honestly, that kind of appreciation for something that I was doing that could be of service, that could be of value, both for me and for other men out there. So where this whole midlife male thing came from, it came from me hitting my tipping point, if you will, in middle age. And it wasn't just one, there was a series of them, but the culmination of these situations, circumstances, various signs and signals and tipping points over the years of life, I got to 47. I found myself at 47. I was the same age as when my father had passed away. We've talked about this a little bit. And I was married, kids, the beautiful house, the beautiful wife, the two beautiful boys, the two beautiful cars, the executive lifestyle, the office on the 25th floor of, overlooking downtown Houston, all of those things. So from the outside looking in, everything looked great. And I didn't feel that way. And here I am. Now I have accomplished my single goal in life, which was to live longer than my father had. And what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with this next phase of my life? Bonus time, as I called it. I'm in bonus time right now. So what am I going to do as a husband, as a father, as a provider, as a man? And really, what do I want to do? And most importantly, how am I going to do it? I got the why, man. Why I wanted to be a better husband, why I wanted to be a better father, why I wanted to be in better shape. I had the why. I got all the reasons for the why too. But what I struggled with is I didn't know how, Adam. And I was probably the guy that a lot of people would have looked to help them with the how. Guarded, successful, kind of strong looking, opinionated, intimidating, egotistical, if you will, all of these other things. And I was the opposite of all of those things. I was lacking confidence. I was lacking security. I was very scared about my future, my family's future, my health. I was drinking too much. I wasn't working out the way I wanted to. I wasn't really living the way I wanted to really ultimately be living. I was missing moments and things. I was just not really making great choices. Or maybe I was making the right choices by societal metrics of success for men, chasing the salary and the title and the bigger book of business. And you don't miss that meeting to go to this kid's game. And then you can rationalize and justify them all because like, oh, that's what my business partner is doing, or that's what my client expects from me. So on that day, it was really a point where I said, okay, today is just the day I'm going to start doing something differently. I'm going to start making one better choice at a time. And I'm going to start controlling what I can control. And I started having conversations with other men that I looked at from afar, that I respected and that I liked, or that at least I thought I did, or thought I had it figured out, or anything from the outside looking in, much like me. And I started interviewing those men and talking to those men and asking them if they would share their wisdom with me, share their experiences with me. And it wasn't called Midlife Male at the time. It wasn't that. It was actually, I was really approaching this almost from like a risk standpoint. I was in insurance and risk management at the time. So these were typically entrepreneurs and risk takers, but the conversations turned very personal very quickly. And it turned into different conversations that were really about risk and risk mitigation in life. And those conversations led to great podcast episodes, which led to a newsletter that I was writing, and led to the book that combined those conversations with my experiences and applications. And what I came up with was, okay, family and fitness and finance and food and fashion and fun, these categories that I cared about, it became my new definition for success rather than salary and title, a more holistic metric for success, a different kind of pie chart. And that's how the Midlife Male mantra really started. And now it's a coaching program, an inner circle community, events and experiences, speaking, both on stages and in panels and on podcasts with guys like you. And here we are, and I'll be 52 next week. So progress is a process, and I am still right smack in the middle of the process.
Well, happy birthday, first off. And second of all, one of the things that I love is you had a vision, and it was partially based on what you felt you weren't. And many men, what they do is they just put this paper mache mask to project what they wish to be, but it's as thin as paper mache. It's not real. And what you did instead was you did something kind of akin to the parable of the elephant, the blind men and the elephant. All these blind men are touching an elephant. One's touching the ear, says it's like a pancake. One's touching the tusk, says no, it's actually like a bone. One of them's touching a leg and says it's a tree trunk, and another's touching the tail, says it's rope. Each one thinks they know the entirety of it. What you've done is you've basically, through interviewing a lot of different people, been able to come up with a fusion of what works for you. You're not saying Troy Aikman's awesome and I'm going to just copy and paste his reality, because that wouldn't work for you. But what you have done is provided his blueprint and allowed other men to pick and choose what works for them. And you've done exactly the same thing. It's a brilliant solution. And I love the fact that you had a profound wound as a child. You had one of the greatest fathers imaginable. And tragically, he died at 47. And I was talking with Michael Mead, a mythologist, about how our wounds inform us. Almost like if you look behind every superhero, there's a wound. And that wound builds them into who they become. And that's your backstory as well for Midlife Male. Midlife Male, in some ways, really starts with the death of your father, from where I sit.
It does. And I appreciate that very much. And I think that situations and circumstances can either defeat us or they can define us. And it's been important to me that my situation and circumstance did not defeat me. but that I could live my legacy while I'm still here and we make the most of it, ultimately leave a really good one. And that's the best way that I can honor my dad. That's the best way that I can make him proud. And that's the best way I think that I can keep his memory and spirit and everything alive, even within my own two boys, and pay it forward and pass it down. And now they're 21 and 18. And one thing that you also mentioned, and I'll circle back on it, was in terms of putting this, if you will, framework, if you will, in a way together. And now I've been really fortunate to work with hundreds of other men and help them build their maps, the midlife action plan or map, is that it's exactly as you described, Adam. I call it aggregate, curate, and eliminate. Which is, from all of the different men that I've spoken to and conversations that I've had, and there's all of just the general noise that's out there, good, bad, and indifferent, it's overwhelming. The key is, can you aggregate from everything that is out there? But then you have to curate it down. You've got to curate it down to what works for you. And then you've got to be relentless about eliminating the stuff that doesn't.
1,000,000%. So hard to do, by the way, isn't it?
It is. It's simple, but it's hard. I'm a simpleton. You're eloquent in the way you describe things, and you're the doctor. And I'm a simpleton. I'm a trial and error, test and retest.
Dude, I'm calling massive bullshit on that. You are not a simpleton. I get that you self-define that way, but man, you are profound and rich. You are like a full-bodied wine, man.
I need the answers to the test. If you write it down, I can follow it. If you throw the ball, I'll bring it back. But where I struggled was for those years that I was rudderless. The years without a real plan, the years with trying to conform to others' definitions of success or how they were living, rather than taking all of those things that existed and again, figuring out which ones really worked for me and which ones didn't. And that it was also okay for not everything to work for me and not everyone's way to have to be my way, but to take these pieces, combine them and bring them in to create something original and that did work and felt authentic and real for the way I wanted to operate. So when you've got that, I think you've got something unique, and I think you've got something really special there. When you have that map and you have that personal operating system and you understand your standards and how you're wired, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to accomplish your goals. All of a sudden, preparation, consistency, accountability, discipline, inspiration, all of a sudden, those things that are so difficult, they make more sense. You are integrating them into your life and your lifestyle because you can see the bigger picture. You mentioned reverse engineering. You can see where you're going 3 years down the road. You've written it out. You've scripted it. It is your vivid vision. Cameron Herold wrote that book. It's one of my favorites, Vivid Vision. And when you reverse engineer back from that, the annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and ultimately daily actions you take and choices you make, okay, the game slows down.
Could not agree more. One of the things you're describing also is just running after one rabbit at a time rather than chasing two rabbits and getting none. That's an old proverb. And I think that's so important. The aggregate, curate, and eliminate. The eliminate part is really hard. We have cognitive biases that say add. And a colleague of mine who I absolutely love, he wrote a book called Subtract. Leidy Klotz, a brilliant professor out of the University of Virginia, talks about how beautiful it is to cut away. Now, one of the things that I had trouble with, and I'm guessing you're going to resonate with this, I grew up with like U2, and I wanted to have a voice like Bono's. There's one small problem. I sing like a bass, maybe a baritone. I can't hit those high notes like Bono can hit. I wanted to sing like Sting. Not happening either. And those were the voices. And one of the problems that can also happen as we need to cut away is leaning into what we've got and who we are. You, by no means, were going to probably be in the NBA. But one of the things we had to do is cut these things away. And it's so hard to cut away because we don't want to subtract. I want to be like Bono. I want to be like Sting. And I'm not. Instead, I have to lean into the voice I've got and find a way to rock that. And you have rocked it, Greg, so freaking hard. The energy that comes through the Zoom right now, man, just chilling with you is so powerful. You've got it. And it's not surprising at all that you've been a massive success in all the things you've tried to do. And that your father has got to be proud of you for rocking what you've got.
You're kind.
Not
And
kind. Just reflecting.
And I'm learning to also just try to get better at saying thank you and acceptance. And now let's answer the question and that is there. And what that is I do think that less is more. I do think that it is addition by subtraction.
Right.
I believe that more is typically the easier choice. Adding is much easier than subtracting. And thinking we need to do more or say more or make more and earn more and travel more or do all these, again, more is easy. And everyone these days looks like they're doing more and more. And that's what they're showing you. They're showing you on social media. That's what they're showing you in their publications. And that's what they're showing you in your lives. Nobody wants to show less out there. Less is harder, but I believe that doing less with more focus is, in my case at least, leads to greater success. And by success, I mean happiness and fulfillment and having more fun and being able to embrace and enjoy open space and not fill every moment of your life with something all the time. My wife may differ with you. She thinks I have to have something going on all the time. Still slower, lesser Greg than used to be in perpetual motion out there. And I think you do have to lean in and be a realist. I talk about looking in the mirror all the time. And if you can look in the mirror and also be proud of the man looking back at yourself, then that's the win. That's the real win. And we have to be realistic in what our capabilities are, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. And it's not always the best decision to try to strengthen every weakness, i.e., you could see your non-Bono-like voice being a weakness.
Right.
Unless I sing like Bono, I'm not a success. That's what I want. I'm going to go after. I'm going to take vocal lesson after vocal lesson, invest all this time. And it's like, hey, Adam, that ain't happening. Okay. Any more than like I could hang myself upside down from a pull-up bar, and I am not going to stretch myself to be a 6'5" or forward in the NFL or NBA. But, you can go, I have a voice for movie trailers. I have a voice,
That's right.
Or I can go into this other direction in these other areas. So I don't think it's also that we have to strengthen every weakness. Sometimes we also have to really work on strengthening our strengths. Just say, hey, it is what it is. I could spend a lot of time, seeing hair replacement specialists. Or I could just shave my head and go about my fucking day. Depending on where you are in terms of confidence and self-esteem and what you want to rock or what you want to do or what you see as a good investment or expense or time or energy, all we're faced with every day are just decisions and options and choices. Thousands of them. All I've figured out is that when you make the better choice the majority of the time, that the majority of your life gets better. And that's your choice, the better one for you.
Could not agree more. Now, I want to talk with you about Carlos. I hope you're smiling. I read about Carlos in your book, and I thought, what a great idea. Can you share with my listeners who Carlos is and what he's done for you?
So Carlos is a real person. Everyone thinks I made Carlos up in the book. I kind of did, but I'm not smart enough even to change the name to protect the innocent. So there is actually a real Carlos, and he is modeled, if you will, off of my friend Carlos, who owns a gym here in Houston, who is one of the most secure, confident, like he's just the guy you look at and and you go, this guy just makes the right decisions. And the chapter's all about, this article that I wrote, what would Carlos do? And I wrote him as my imaginary friend that when I'm morally, ethically, physically, however I'm being challenged and I have an issue, what would Carlos do? When you get the angels and devils on our shoulder.
For sure.
So this was my way of trying to work myself into making better decisions and better choices and asking myself, hey, what would Carlos do? Because he would do the right thing. And by the way, old Greg or former Greg or even current incarnations of Greg hasn't been so great with always making the right choice and hasn't been the greatest at taking advice, or listening. So what would happen if I did start listening? And what would happen if I did do what I know Carlos would do, even if the way I'm naturally wired doesn't seem like what I would do or be right for me? You probably saw maybe the Seinfeld episode back then with George Costanza.
That's exactly where my brain went.
And I don't know whether subconsciously I saw the Seinfeld episode and then did the Carlos thing, or I saw the Carlos thing and then we were watching it. And my son is a Seinfeld addict.
Look at the pen I'm using even. It's a Seinfeld pen. Remember the pen that Jerry gets over in Boca Vista?
Is that from Vandalay? Or whatever? When he goes down to Florida?
He gets it from Columbus. And why did you take the pen, Jerry? Keep the pen.
I do know that episode. He goes down to visit his dad. And
that's the one. Why did you take the pen, Jerry?
So that's the Carlos aspect of it. And what's interesting, I think, there and what guys have resonated with, we all have that person, or we all are challenged at times with where our compass is pointing. And again, we struggle a lot, and I do, with how we are naturally wired. Why do we gravitate towards certain things or other things? And back to our past, maybe I'm not the most trusting person because I've been burned for a while over this, or I don't deal that well with loss because I had this, or the way I would make a decision or make a choice would be different from maybe the one that could be the better choice for me or have better results. We make the same mistakes over again, or, self-sabotage, or that because of the way that we're wired and we can't sometimes get out of our own way. So I just tried to create a rule for myself and create a situation where, okay, I'm going to make the decision that is either the right one or the opposite one, because that's from what I would normally do, because what I'm doing hasn't been working. So the opposite, or what Carlos would do, it can't be any worse. And if anything, it might provide possibility and probability of greater success down the road.
Right. I believe in this method, by the way. I use it in my own practice with men, and I have them choose a Carlos of their design based on the thing they're trying to build. I remember when I was trying to become a public speaker, and I would ask myself, what would Jon Stewart do? Because he was, to my eye, like the funniest, smartest guy. He could hang with somebody like a major president and call him dude. He hung out with Barack Obama and called him dude. And I think all of these paragons that we can keep in our mind as kind of the what would Carlos do will actually call on your better angel. And it won't be Carlos, it'll be Greg. And it will be a version of Greg that was always there, but that might not have expressed itself if it wasn't evoked in the right way. And I think it's genius. Let's talk about fashion for a second. You talk about various F's in the book. And what's really interesting, by the way, if I can pitch it even further, he includes live interviews with the actual people he interviews in the audio version. That was spectacular. I mean, that was an engineering masterpiece. Like, I found myself a little bit envious. Like, damn, I wish I'd done that. But anyway.
I've totally forgotten about that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's like absolutely brilliant. But you even talk about fashion and rocking your look and hiring a tailor, various things that I hadn't really considered enough. And let's talk about fashion for a second, because you found your style and it reduces your decision fatigue because you just know what you're going to wear, I'm sure. But let's talk about that. Like, what's important about finding your style and how can we do it?
Well, I think you nailed it in terms of finding your style. Fashion, it fit because it has an F. What we're really talking about in all of these categories is widening the lens on them too. I'll just go on an example. Like, family can include friends and relationships and all those dynamics that are there. And fitness is really health and sustainability and longevity, and food is nutrition. So like, we got the F's, okay? But like, let's also allow for a wider definition around even the F's that are there. And fashion in particular, is you nailed it. It's not about being on the cover of GQ or Esquire or being dressed to the nines all day, every day and having to do this. It's about your personal brand. It's about confidence and security and what makes you feel like the best version of you and the best representation of you. Because let's face it, like, people size you up. That's
totally.
what they do first.
Absolutely.
They size you up, okay? And how you perceive yourself and how you want to be perceived by others, fashion has a lot to do with that. Style has a lot to do with that. There was like that phrase, get up, get dressed, go to work. Well, when the get dressed part, it's like, okay, a lot of ways to get dressed. Do you want this schlumpy, not put together, if you will, guy? He's got the 84 Rockets, t-shirt on, the sweatpant or whatever. Nothing's tucked in. Nothing looks all good. They're both attorneys, okay?
Who are you
and the other guy, okay, has a really great, pair of jeans, he's got good shoes. He's rocking a nice watch. He's wearing a t-shirt, but it's a nice, well-fitting like, it looks put together. Which one instills more confidence in you? Which guy you want to hire? Which one seems more backable? So it really comes down to, Adam, again, like, what do you want to put on your body? What represents you? And again, having a standard for that. And performance is affected by this too. I mean, when I put on black shorts, black shirt from Rhone, okay? And I've got the right socks and I've got the Flux footwear and like I'm put together even to go to the gym, like my workout's better. That's what I wear. That's kind of the uniform that I perform best in.
Dude, I'm just going to make an assumption here that maybe you put 10% more into that workout and over time with compounding interest, think about that, how much stronger you are.
This is what we're doing. We're stacking little wins each day. And if I can get one of those wins, just from the way that I get up and get dressed and get to work, I'm starting off in a better position than I was yesterday. Or I'm starting off in a better position than maybe the guy that doesn't. And then again, when you have confidence and when you feel good about yourself in the mirror, getting dressed, starting your day, fueling your body with what you put in it, that's momentum. That's where the interest starts compounding. For instance, it's motivation. Oh, we got to look for motivation to do this. No, it's discipline. It's preparation, discipline, and accountability. It's not fucking motivation. I'm not a motivated guy. The motivation comes from seeing the results of the actions you take and the choices that you make. Then you become more motivated because then you want more of that.
Yep.
That's more you want, not more like shiny objects, not more responsibilities, not more things on your calendar, but more of that feeling.
The degree to which I hear this idea, I'm just waiting to be motivated or I'm just waiting for my muse. Screw that. The book, The War of Art, I'm forgetting the name of the author. I've quoted him in my book, but I love him. He says, you know what? I get up and I write every day from 6 to 10. I don't feel like it most days, but I do it. And that's how you write. You get up and you do it. And I remember when I wrote my dissertation, I didn't want to do it. And I remember it's this Friday night, like, dude, what am I going to do? I'm going to watch some movies. It was a really hot summer night, like really hot. And I remember this. It was like 10 p.m. I'm in my office. I take off my shirt. I'm sweating like crazy. And I just pounded on the keyboard for 6 hours till 4 a.m. writing the proposal. It was like a person on meth, except there was no meth. I was not inspired initially. I was resistant, but I just broke through and did it. And I know that's how you roll.
You got to find your way. My way that I'll show you, this works for me and anybody can do it a different way. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I am not an early morning workout guy. I like to write in the mornings. I like to have coffee. Okay. I like to send emails and get my work off my plate so that I can have a clear head so that then I can go train and not be checking emails and all the other stuff. So I'm like a mid-morning kind of person. But what I do is I get in my uniform, I get in my black workout clothes typically, and I go and I do my workout. I always schedule the hardest thing of my day, the thing that I want to do the least, right after my workout. And the reason I do that is because when I'm finished with that workout, I feel my best. I'm tough to beat. That's when I feel my most confident. That's when I feel my strongest. That's when I feel I'm better than most 52-year-old guys, better than most 32-year-old guys. That's my look at me moment. I had very few of those. So the thing that I want to do the least, I want to do it right after my workout because that's when I'm going to do it. That's when I'm going to keep the promise that I made to myself. I stay in those clothes. I bypass the changing the clothes. It's right after the workout. And people know this. If it happens to be a meeting or anything else, that if it's that meeting and it's like 11 o'clock in the morning and I'm still in my, they know that they were my hardest fucking conversation, the thing I wanted to do the least. But that's when I feel my best. And that's when I'm like, hey, if I'm going to negotiate, that's when I'm going to negotiate.
Oh, Greg, I could talk to you all day and it is happening. You and I are definitely hanging. As a business person, you talk about the importance of an ROI, but you talk about something that I'd never seen before and it's beautiful, an ROL. It's kind of like almost an ongoing theme throughout the book is ROL, return on life as I understand it. Let's talk about that.
Like most things in my life, it's not original. I don't claim it as being the guy that created it. And I wish I recall offhand right now where I first read the term And then I Googled the term and have found anybody can, and they'll see that the term has been used. The term predates me, but I claimed it. It was one of those things that resonated with me and landed with me. And again, return on investment or return on life. What really sounds better? I said, what if I started focusing again more on return on life? And a lot of times we also think that we're making investments. And what we're really doing is it's an expense. Investments should return. That's where
absolutely
return from. Expenses are we throw money away, time away, and we don't get anything back. A lot of times we confuse ROI with expense or expense with ROI.
Let's hear an example of one of the places that we commonly throw away, but we think it's an investment, except, dude, it's not.
Oh, look, why do you think there's so much self-help out there? I think one of the main areas is masterminds, books, retreats, and all of these places. I think people are so over-indexed in consumption, thinking that all of these things are going to change their life and they're going to get so much return on the investment that they don't get any return. All it is expense out, expensive time, energy, money, so on and so forth, because they mistake the doing for the actual work. Oh, I'm busy, I'm doing, I'm going, I'm investing in myself, but they don't apply. They go from one thing to the one thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. Instead of taking the book and doing what you told them and I'm super psyched, I'm going to go do exactly what he says in here. They buy 10 more. And maybe they don't even finish the other 9. And things compete with one another so that they end up not getting the return on their life or their investment that they had hoped for.
I got to say, that's why I say just take one thing out of my book at a time. And personally, my life has been vastly improved. And I'm sure yours has too, by going to certain seminars, listening to certain podcasts. As dumb as it sounds, I was listening to a podcast and I took one of the tips and it has been so easy to implement in my life. And it's been such a game changer. And there have been so many of these things that I have implemented. I fall into the camp of I listen and I take something away and I do it. But you're talking about the guy who just like Cookie Monster and like shoving cookies in his mouth.
They've expend energy and time again and money and they're doing. And I think back to your point, I think that it is about being intentional, and I think it's about being purposeful, and I think it's about in what you consume so that you can then produce more than you consume in the future. And if you stay in that cycle, I think you see return on investment and return on life. Consume something, that something has value, implement from the consumption to greater productivity, happiness, fulfillment, wealth, implement the strategy, if you will, and then move to the next thing or the next piece. Don't start the 90-day program and 26 days into the 90-day program, you've bought 2 other programs. You've listened to 4 other guys that directly compete with the thing you just bought so that now you're all confused. One of the reasons I felt strongly that this book needed to be something that any guy could pick up at any time and open it up anywhere and get something of value. You don't have to read this cover to cover. You can read a chapter. You can read a quote. You can say, hey, I'm only fucking interested in the family piece. My fitness is fine, okay? My finances are fine. I don't need him for this. I need this. And I think you'll still get your money's worth and you'll get value because I believe, like you, if you take one good piece of information out of anything, great. But the point being, I think we overdo it.
So good. And, I actually took something from every chapter in your book, but I'm actually putting them into play. And I really, really want listeners to enjoy this book, take something from it. I think that they may take many somethings from it, but this has been great. What is anything I should have asked but haven't yet?
I think it's important, and we don't say this enough, and I don't think that we hear this enough out there, and I'll just be the flag waver, if you will, for this, to talk about how to understand and realize and step back that there's always something that you're not seeing. I don't, again, have all the answers. I don't profess to know everything. It is not rainbows and unicorns in my life every single day. I am not maximizing middle age 100% of the time, 365 days a year. Okay. It is not any of that. I think that the beauty of this is that there's conversation and there's collaboration and there's connection and that we're all just trying to get a little bit better every day, but that we're human. And I think we could use a little greater exposure on the flaws and the things that go wrong and the mistakes and the missteps and the challenges, and maybe a little less of saying, hey, the truth is. If you're truthful, you don't need to start the sentence with the truth is. Just write a truthful sentence. A little less of, let me be honest with you.
When somebody starts a sentence with that, it's like, wow, what has preceded that? Have you been dishonest with me previously?
Authenticity and the buzzwords like, hey, if you're truly authentic, you don't need to say it. You're just living it, you're acting it, you're being it. I think that doesn't get talked enough about in an image conscious world. I didn't write the perfect book. I don't write a hit fucking song every Sunday. That's not realistic. I'm speaking to myself as well. I hope that we're patient with ourselves. I hope that we show ourselves some gratitude that we're all works in progress. And I think even when you go on shows like this and I get to be your guest on here and you get to be my guest, that the people listening, and maybe one of the takeaways is that it's okay to be perfectly imperfect. And that's who we are. And I think men need to say that and acknowledge that it's hard all the time. And we're just doing our best to make it seem less hard and to do things as well as we can.
Couldn't agree more. And if we're not missing the target, we're not shooting high enough, we're shooting often enough. That's for sure. And I love mistakes. Sean Hayes from Smart Listen, Will and Grace says that, our mistakes make great stories later on. And my friend Bonnie Burnell says that mistakes are tuition. Guy Kawasaki says, you got to make an ass. You got to make an ass out of yourself.
Do you have all these brilliant ones? You say it succinctly, that you're quoting these people with the beautiful way of saying things in one or two words is so awesome. It's true. And I'll just leave you with this. Nobody's really come on my show and talked about all their successes. They would rather talk about their failures because they learn more from their failures, from the mistakes, from the missteps. Just like adding more is easy, talking about your successes is easier than talking about your failures and your mistakes and your missteps and maybe the moments that you're not as proud of. But those are the ones that are really the most helpful.
Could not agree more. On this very podcast, I asked somebody a really creative question. And I still think about that because he was somebody very important to me. And it was not the right question. I was trying to be clever. And the fact of the matter is, we connect more when we go with what's simple and just like, hey, what's going on? And that mistake has informed me immensely. But my man, I'm going to ask you my final question. Greg Scheinman, if you had the power to confer upon all humanity one insider skill that would dramatically improve the life of the individual and perhaps society at large, since we're all connected, what would that insider skill be? And how do you imagine it would impact the individual as well as those around him or her?
I think in order to be generous and in order to be able to be helpful and be of service to others, you have to be self-reliant. I think that self-care isn't selfish. I think it's one of the most selfless things that you can do. So I think the work starts with you. And if you can become self-reliant, and I mean that physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, doesn't mean you have to be alone, but you have to be capable. You have to be able to take care of yourself in order to be able to take care of others. If you're struggling emotionally, then that's where you need to work on becoming stronger and more self-reliant. If you're struggling physically, then you need to get your ass in the gym and be a stronger man. If you're struggling financially, you need to figure out how you're going to earn more to get your health where you need to go. But I think everyone's looking for somebody to save them. And it's always somebody else's fault. Or I'm going to blame my boss, or I'm going to blame my spouse, or I'm going to blame my schedule, or I'm going to blame there weren't good food choices around, or I didn't have time for this, or this person didn't help me, or they said no to me, or I tried to sell this thing to them and they didn't buy it and they didn't get it. It starts and it stops with you.
That may be one of the best blessings you could confer. Like, this is the gift of our life, is to feel a sense of empowerment and control over what we do and what we don't do, and taking full responsibility for our lives. That's one of the hardest lessons. I remember having to learn it myself, and I will learn it till the day I die. Thank you so much for sharing your hard-earned wisdom, Greg, with our listeners. We didn't even get into some of the more colorful stuff, but that means that I'll just have to have you on again.
I will try to have shorter answers and more questions. Okay. And more questions. Can you help me with that? Okay.
Come on.
Otherwise, you and I can sit around and we can talk for 4 hours, which I'm happy to do also on there. I'm like, okay, I listen to you and I go, brevity.
Let's close this out and say, my man, it's been so much fun hanging with you.
You too. Thank you so much, man. You know I love you. Appreciate it.
Right back at you, brother. This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.